I've been wanting to do another I2P video for a little while, and I think right now is the perfect time with all of the age verification laws creeping their way into the Linux world and every other computer for that matter. So for those of you that don't know, I2P is an anonymization network, kind of like Tor, but honestly much better and more optimized for hidden services within the network. So what I mean by this is when most people are using Tor, the Tor network or the Tor browser, their goal, like their ultimate goal with using Tor, is to connect to something that's on the regular internet, a www.whatever.com site, in an anonymous way so that they can't be tracked, basically like a proxy chain on steroids. But then the hidden services within Tor, the .onion sites, were kind of an afterthought for the Tor network. I mean, they still work, but it's not the primary purpose of Tor. Whereas in I2P, we get the opposite. The I2P sites or EAP sites and the services that are running on them are the primary use case for the I2P network. In fact, the official I2P client includes an email service, a BitTorrent client, and it's also possible to use I2P as an out proxy for the regular internet, like how most people use Tor, but that's also kind of an afterthought and not the primary use case for I2P. But since file sharing through torrents is not just possible, but encouraged with I2P Snark as a built-in client that's bundled with the Java implementation of I2P, this really makes it perfect for seeding ungovernable Linux torrents and also for downloading packages in an anonymous way. Now, I've gone over how to configure torrenting over I2P before, but quick recap. If you're using the official Java-based I2P router, then you already have a torrenting application built right into it, which you can access from the router console's homepage. And so to use this, all you have to do is paste in a magnet link into the from URL section. In fact, I'll just go ahead and demonstrate that real quick. You can find some torrents for Linux distros at Postman's Tracker. So why don't we do this CachyOS one real quick. Go ahead and copy the link, and then we paste that magnet link in here and add the torrent. You could also just add the torrent file in if you download one of those where it says browse here, and then it's going to go ahead and start downloading that torrent for you over I2P. Now, of course, you want to make sure that you're verifying these ISOs before you use them if you're downloading them from a non-official source like this. It's one thing if, your favorite distro maintainer runs their own EAP site, their own, .I2P site, and they're hosting the torrents there. But these are from, we don't know who these are from, right? I mean, it's over the dark web. So you want to make sure that you verify these ISOs, check to see if the SHA-256 checksums of the downloaded ISO matches the one that's on the official website of the Linux distro that you're downloading. And if it matches, then you're all set. You know that there haven't been any modifications made to that ISO. And you can also configure Qbittorrent to run over I2P as well, which is really great if, well, for one, if you're already using Qbittorrent and you don't want to keep track of two different torrenting applications, or if you're using I2PD instead of the official I2P router because the I2PD implementation doesn't come with all the extra applications built in. So a couple quick checks for Qbittorrent is you want to make sure that it's compiled against the either libtorrent 2.0 or later library or libtorrent roster bar, which is also basically libtorrent 2.0. You want to make sure that it's compiled against that so that the I2P implementation works better. And you need to have, I think, version 5 or later, or maybe version 4.5 or later of Qbittorrent to even have the I2P experimental settings available in your connection preferences. So once all that's checked, you want to, well, of course, go ahead and enable the I2P experimental setting here with the checkbox and then put in the host, so the IP address for your I2P router. And then you also want to put in the port for your SAM application. So the SAM setting that you configure in I2P. I don't think it's enabled by default, or at least I'm pretty sure it's not in I2PD. So you want to, of course, configure it to make sure that's enabled. Pick what port you want to run it over, and then go ahead and put that port in here. And then same thing for your HTTP proxy, which I do believe is enabled by default. But yeah, select the type for HTTP. You also could do a SOCKS proxy if you want, but I'm just doing the default HTTP one. And then again, put in the host and the port from your I2P router that the HTTP proxy is running over. And my configuration for I2P might be a little different than yours because I have my I2P router running on a separate machine. So that's why I have a LAN address in here instead of the default 127 loopback address, which is what most I2P guides will show you, because most of them assume that you're running the I2P router on the same machine that you're going to be browsing I2P or downloading torrents from. But this is actually a pretty good setup if you want to be able to access I2P through different devices on your LAN. You just have to make sure that you open the ports on the machine. So on the actual I2P router, open its device ports for SAM and also for the HTTP proxy over your LAN. You don't need to make those ports like publicly accessible. You don't need to forward them to the internet or anything like that. You just have to make sure that other devices on your LAN are able to reach them so that your client machine can communicate through the I2P router out to the I2P network. And the same thing also applies to your console port. So like my I2P router is running over port 7657. So that also needs to be available, or that port needs to be opened in your firewall like UFW or whatever you're using over the LAN to make sure that other devices can manage it as well. And if you're going to do that with the console port, I also recommend setting a password to be able to access the console port, especially if you're letting every device on your LAN connect to it, just so that whenever your friends come over, they don't go and hack your I2P router and change any of your settings in here and mess things up. Okay, so now you're able to download and seed your Linux distros anonymously, but what distro should you download in order to be ungovernable with these age check laws? Well, I'm going to advocate for Artix Linux. Not just because it's an Arch-based distro, but one of its developers actually responded to the question of age verification laws, saying that they will never require any verification or identification from the user. So Artix Linux is at least philosophically aligned with people who don't want these age verifications inside of Linux, which is pretty damn based. And another important detail about Artix is that it doesn't use systemd at all, which has become even more important because systemd recently merged in the beginnings of age verification code into their source code, into their init system. And since virtually every Linux distro out there uses systemd, this code that's in systemd, this age verification code, is going to end up being present in pretty much every Linux machine out there once that update propagates downstream, unless the distro maintainers go out of their way to disable that code in systemd, which is possible because, again, systemd is open source, so you can modify it to your liking, but the more work you put on the distro maintainers, the less likely they're going to be to do all of that work with every single update. So yeah, if you didn't know already, systemd is one of the big enemies in the Linux world for more reasons than just this, but age verification in an init system is an obvious enough issue that I think most regular people are going to start to understand what the anti-systemd crowd has been warning us about for years. So we've got ourselves now a pretty based Linux distro We're seeding it on the dark web, or at least I'm seeding it on the dark web right now. But what we really need is a way to be able to download the packages for our Linux distro over I2P. Because if you actually read these age verification laws, it is the downloading of software or the use of package managers that those laws are really trying to restrict, not necessarily the use of an operating system, although I do think there are some that are restricting the use of an operating system. But anyway, if the software is served over the dark web, then those laws need not apply. Luckily, I was able to find an EAP site called Corey's Artix Mirror, which, as the name implies, mirrors all of the Artix Linux packages, as well as the Arch Linux packages and the AUR over I2P. He also has downloads for pretty much every different Artix ISO that you could think of with the different init system and desktop environment combos. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like this site actually serves torrents for these files, just, regular web downloads, which kind of sucks for really large files like this, because, sometimes the download can get interrupted, and not to mention that this also is going to end up using more bandwidth from this guy's hidden service because, he's the only one serving this instead of it being distributed over a torrent. But, I'm not going to complain about that because this guy is already offering a really tremendous service by mirroring all of these different packages for, Galaxy, System, World, and then the different gremlins and goblins. So, this alone is really, really great to actually make it possible to pretty much run an entire Linux distro over the dark web. Okay, so now I'm going to walk you through how to connect to this I2P mirror through your Artix Linux machine. So first thing you got to do is actually add the mirror into your mirror list. So that's an exe pacman.d mirror list. And you just add it in like you would any other mirror that you were adding to your mirror list. And Corey, the developer of this site, was also nice enough to include an actual mirrorlist.txt. I believe it's on the root of his website. So let me just go back there real quick. And here we go, mirrorlist.txt. So just go ahead and literally copy that last line there, and then you would paste it into your mirror list. And of course, make sure you're editing the mirror list as root so that you're actually able to save the changes you make to it. So, right quit once you have that added in. And the next part is connecting Pacman to the I2P router. So there's a couple different ways to do this. What I ended up doing was just creating a simple wrapper for Pacman to use the I2P proxy, because with only one EAP site mirror, there's a good chance that the mirror is going to become unavailable or just be too slow. That's a pretty common thing with the dark web, having slow download speeds and less reliable downloads than a standard connection or even a VPN connection because of all of the extra hops that we have to go through. So it's good to have an option to switch between using regular Pacman and the wrapper that goes through the I2P mirror. So it's pretty straightforward to do. Just go ahead and create a script in user local bin, and I called mine I2Pacman. You can name it whatever you want, but you want to make sure it's something fairly easy because this is actually going to be the command that you'll have to type later to download packages over I2P. So in here, first we have to declare this environment variable for the proxy. So that's going to be export all proxy, and then inside of here is going to be whatever your IP address is for your I2P router. And again, if you have it running on your LAN, then you can just go ahead and use that LAN address here. Or if it's running on the same machine that you're running Artix from, it's going to be a 127.0.0.1 address. and then also the port for your HTTP proxy for I2P. So this is actually pretty much the same as configuring your browser to be able to browse I2P. You can see that my HTTP proxy IP address and the port here in LibreWolf is exactly the same as what I have configured in Artix. And then on the next line, you want to exec pacman, and I'll get to this disable download timeout in a minute, but you want to have this bit at the end with the $@ because this is pretty much going to pass in your command line flags for pacman into this pacman wrapper. So like, -syu or -rns, all that type of stuff gets passed in with this. Now, the disable download timeout. Okay, this is really important to use if you're going to be downloading packages over I2P because, again, the dark web is very slow and very unreliable. And by default, pacman will error out. It'll basically tell you something like, network was too slow. If your download speed falls below, I want to say 1 kbps for more than 10 seconds. And so you probably want that functionality if you're using pacman normally, but over the dark web, going below 1 kbps for more than 10 seconds is a pretty common occurrence. So this is going to make sure that that command line flag is always applied to pacman when you call it through this pacman wrapper. So go ahead and save this and also mark it as executable so that you can then run it from the command line. And all you got to do to download packages over I2P now is call, do it with sudo i2 pacman s, and I'm going to download Nano. I'm going to play it safe and download a really small, simple package because, again, if I download Firefox or Chrome or something like that, we're going to be sitting here all day. So go ahead and run this. And so you can see that it's total download size and net installed size. So Nano isn't already installed to this machine. And so we're just downloading Nano, no dependencies required, which is really good for this little example. And you can see that it's, kind of slow, right? I mean, less than 10 kbps, but we'll get there. This is the cost of freedom, guys. I mean, this is what it takes to be able to have a completely ungovernable Linux system. All right, and we're all done. So now I can run Nano and go ahead and use this, although there's no reason to because I already have Vim installed. And see, I don't even know how to quit out of it. I think it's Control X. Yes, and no, I don't need to save anything. So yeah, there you go. You can now download your packages or basically use an entire Linux system. I mean, you can obtain the ISO and then download all the packages that you need over I2P. So good luck trying to enforce any age laws on a setup like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it to hack the algorithm, and check out my online store, based.win, where you can buy my awesome merch or accessories for your phone or laptop. 10% store-wide discount when you pay with Monero XMR at checkout. Have a great rest of your day.